And I want to introduce the individuals that are, responsible for putting this program together, along with myself, Frank Escobedo, the county extension agent in Kennedy and Clayburgh County, Bob McCool, agent in San Patricio County, and Rogelio Mercado in Rogelio. I'm sorry, I got caught cutting and pasting there and didn't have your county there appropriately, but that should say Jim Wells County. And so greatly appreciate the collaborative effort of all four of us to bring this offering to growers in the coastal bend and beyond. And we feel like we've got a good series of programs that we've put together that can only build on each other as we move forward in the coming weeks. Today's program is focusing on marketing and maximizing the value of our calf crop through some of the tools that are available to us, and look forward to providing some of that information. As we move forward in our future programs, those are going to kind of focus on some of those input costs, and some of them that are very apparent, such as feeding and some of the costs associated with maintaining our cow condition, and then along with some that maybe are less visible, such as the costs of infertility in our cow herd, and having that open cow on the feed bill on the place. And then maybe some opportunities that we have to minimize some of those types of costs by improving our fertility and reproduction with maybe some of the input costs or management strategies that we can employ to manage those types of situations. And then finally, we are going to round out our programs with the beef quality assurance certification through some of the information that you'll gain over the next 3 weeks, along with that final session. We'll be able to offer everybody that's participated a beef quality assurance certification. And, again, that's one of those tools that we have that'll help us recognize the good management practices that you as beef producers are already doing, and just kind of help speak to some of that external scrutiny that sometimes we have in place in the beef industry. So it's a good tool to, highlight the good practices that we as producers do have and be recognized for that. And so we've got again, what we feel like is a great set of programs for y'all over the coming weeks, and we're excited to be offering these for you. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Frank, and he can introduce our first presenter in this series of programs.
Okay, so let's start. Our first speaker for today is Dr. David Anderson, professor and extension economist in the Department of Agricultural Economics at Texas A&M University. Dr. Anderson holds 2 degrees from the University of Arizona and his PhD from Texas A&M University. His research has focused on livestock markets and the impacts of alternative farm programs on livestock, dairy, and crop areas. It is our pleasure to have Dr. Anderson with us this evening. Dr. Anderson, turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Frank. Thank you very much for the invitation. I sure appreciate the chance to be with you all tonight. And thanks for that nice introduction. Let's jump right in. I want to hit about 3 things, really headed toward, the idea of where we're going in terms of cattle prices. Not only this fall, what's been going on the last couple of weeks, particularly with this sharp decline in prices, and then as well where we're going next year. And keeping that in mind, I want to try and hit about 3 really ideas. One is kind of feed and drought. I think those are the 2 big things hitting our calf market right now. I want to talk a little bit about adjustments, and you guys, everybody knows this is about the strangest year of all time, and the worst one in a bunch of time, as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of the adjustments that we're seeing to the effects of coronavirus have started at one end, rippled through our cattle industry, and are going back the other way. And so I think it'll be worth taking a couple minutes thinking about adjustments and what that means for calf prices next year. And then I'll show you some price projections based on sort of my fundamental analysis and really where we're headed. And that's sort of where I'm headed with this. So first off, I want to start with corn prices. Quite honestly, for all of our calves and feeder cattle, we really have an inverse relationship between calf prices and feed costs. And what I mean by that is if feed costs go up, our calf prices go down. And I think that's the biggest part of where we are right now, and really seeing this fairly sharp decline in calf prices over the last several weeks, particularly the last couple weeks, really slipping down below last year's levels. Is really due to these two parts. And so I'm going to start with corn prices, and it's pretty easy to see this run up in prices. And I'm going to keep this same sort of convention on my graphs, where that fat red line is a 5-year average of the last 5 years. The dotted line is last year, and that solid blue line is this year. And I think it's pretty easy to see this run up over the last couple of months in corn prices, really starting with worries about yield. First off, the big windstorm, the derecho that they had that wiped out a bunch of acres in Iowa. There are also some places that had dry conditions, some worries about yields. And so what we've seen is price going up. Really some concerns over what we're going to get for a crop. And now that we're getting this first big winter storm, snow in a bunch of areas, really some freezing conditions, what we have is all we're going to get. Basically, we're almost to that point. And so this run up really is having an effect on our calf prices. I think we're seeing that just in our, whether it's the futures market or it's local auctions, really all over, we're seeing this effect of these corn prices of being above a year ago. And if we think about, if it was soybeans or as a proxy for protein feed, distillers grains in a feedlot ration, whatever we're using for that protein source, we see higher prices there as well. So really understanding that whole feed complex is really dragging us down on the calf side. I think one of the things, if we start thinking longer term about next year, one of the things this run up in prices is going to do is, I expect that it's certainly going to encourage more acres to be planted next year than we probably had this year. And so longer term, I think something in line with that fat red line, that 5-year average, or even to the low side of that is kind of long-term corn prices or feed costs that we're thinking about. But for the moment, we've got some increasing prices hitting us. I think the other part of this we got to talk about is drought. And after 2011 and 2012, I had hoped to never have to talk about this ever again, but it's sort of back with us. And this is the Drought Monitor map from October 13th. And in this case, take a look at where the dark red is. Everywhere we see drought conditions, really across the west, the northern plains of the U.S. We produce a lot of cattle there, and as these dry conditions are hitting us, I think it's forcing more cattle to move, more to head out of that country and head to, we might suspect a lot more going to feedlots, and I think I'll talk about feedlot placements in a minute, but some drought forced movement of calves into feedlots. I think it's also affecting our wheat pasture. That takes a lot of our calves this time of the year or a little before to North Texas, the rolling plains, into Oklahoma, and even into Kansas, where we have a lot of just cattle out on wheat pasture or oats or whatever it is over the winter. And I think this drought is affecting not only our establishment of those pastures, the growth of those pastures. It's probably hurting because of that. I think it's hurting our demand for calves to go there, and I think that's also really affecting our calf prices as well as this heats up. One of the things you may have seen in the news is some talk from the weather folks about an La Nina conditions, which have developed, which deal with ocean temperatures in the Pacific, but affect our winter weather here in the U.S. And one of the things it relates to is that we typically see warmer and drier winters when we have La Nina conditions. And that's really where we are now. And the longer term weather stuff would suggest some increase or some continued development of drought conditions throughout at least a good bit of central Texas as we get on into winter, that we'll see some more development of drought. And quite honestly, if I'd have grabbed this map back in, like July or August, we would have had colored areas across the state as well. But a couple of timely storms brought a lot of rain and got us a little reprieve. But we're starting to see some abnormally dry conditions begin to pop up sort of in central and south central part of the state again. So really, I think this drought thing is another, really area where we probably ought to keep or be doing some thoughts on, particularly as we manage our cow herd over the winter, not just calf prices today, but as we think about our stocking rates and what we need to do on the ranch going forward. I think this is a pretty important area. I thought I'd jump right from that into calf prices. Certainly calf prices this year have been below last year until about August and September. Really the effects of coronavirus. When I show feedlot placements in a minute, it's pretty easy to see back in March and April where our demand for calves really dried up. Yet, if you would have asked me about 8 months ago when I was doing a cattle market program, I would have said, we've got all this turmoil that's happening. But I think by the fall, we'll be talking about calf prices this year being better than they were last year. And I think that held true until this run up, really two things, this run up in feed costs. I think we're really starting to see that hit calf prices. And I think it's also, and also those drought conditions as well, forcing those prices below a year ago. I think that's one of those, things that's always uncertain to us. And one of the uncertainties in the future is just the vagaries of what happens with feed costs because of development of those crops. And so I think that's where, that's really pushing our prices lower. If we looked at heavier weight animals, 700 to 800 pound feeder steers, we're seeing those pressured below a year ago as well. And certainly with the movement in the last 2 weeks on the futures market, forcing those down quite a bit lower than cash prices were last week. And so, I think, it's really this feed cost nature, some slumping fed cattle prices as well, feeding into that, really pressuring some, profitability on the feeding side, which is forcing our prices a little bit lower. I think one of the other things is, well, I'll get into that in a second. Just I'll hold that thought, but you can certainly see we got prices slipping below a year ago. If we think about adjustments since coronavirus, I think this chart of the total number of cattle that we're sending to slaughter is pretty instructive. My gosh, look back here from March to April, we went from 685,000 head a week down to 435,000 head a week, strictly due to plants being shut down or slowing down. And it took quite a bit of time to open plants, but also to learn, to get back up to speed and get our cattle slaughter moved back really close to where we were a year ago. And in fact, we've had a couple of weeks above a year ago, just in the last couple of weeks. But I think it's fair to say we've largely recovered in terms of that ability to process cattle, to move cattle. We've been caught up in our ability quite a bit, at least with the numbers that we have today. If we took that total cattle slaughter and moved it to beef production, one of the adjustments that went on with when plants are closed down and can't move those animals, they're still in a feedlot eating. And so we've seen higher weights, one due to just plain better performance, but also cattle on feed eating more, gaining more weight. But in a nutshell, quite honestly, we go clear back to June, and practically every week has had more beef production than the same week the year before. And that really picks up here in October, late September and early October. where we've gotten back over 550 million pounds a week. And so one of those things that's really pressuring fed cattle prices is just simply large beef production. And so we're trying to move more beef with still some restaurants being shut down, not fully opened. We're recapturing some of that in grocery stores, but probably not all of it. So, if we think about that, we got bigger supplies for sale and some reduced demand simply because our normal retail outlets aren't back up to normal. So I think that argues for some pressure on prices when we look at beef production typically late in the year. Beef production typically builds from early in the year up to late in the year. And so we're on this upward trajectory of production. And I think that's going to pressure our prices going into the winter. I mentioned feedlot placements. USDA's latest cattle on feed report came out. It showed more than 3% more cattle on feed than we had a year ago. Placements were up 5.9%, so it was a pretty big placement month. And when we think of adjustments, we take a look back in March and April where we cut placements by over 20% in feedlots, really because we had no place, nobody wanted to put more in feedlots knowing that there was no place for the ones that they already had there to go. And yet we're trying to, over the last several months, make up that ground. We're building those placements. So, when we didn't place those cattle, that meant those cattle stayed out in the country. And so one of the things we're seeing is the placements that were done, particularly in some states like Kansas, they saw relatively larger increases in placements of very heavy feeder cattle. Over 800 pounds, over 900 pounds were both larger than a year ago. And so we've got some heavyweight calves hitting the market as well. I think that's affecting some of particularly the prices that we see at auction for heavier calves versus lighter calves. And I think it relates to how long we held on to them. The price slides that we would normally see between weight breakdowns, we've had some fluctuation there, but we've got more, I think, heavier cattle for sale that's affecting these placements as well, which means that those heavier cattle that are hitting those feedlots are going to likely come out a little sooner, which I think really pressures us at the end of this year and in the early months of next year with some relatively larger numbers of head available for sale and placements. And with the cattle on feed over 3% compared to a year ago, I think we're really going to test the ability of packing plants and what they have learned and implemented, and are they going to be able to keep up as well in those coming months as we try to move through those larger supplies. Because really the longer term trend of cattle numbers is that we're declining. We peaked in our cow herd last year. This year, fewer cows than we did a year ago. I think 2021 is going to have fewer cows than 2020. And so longer term, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism in terms of some declining numbers, some declining beef production, and higher prices. But I think getting through these next several, 6 months or so of working through these larger supplies, I think are going to be pretty important for prices over that time period. Folks made a lot of the backlog of cattle when we couldn't get those animals slaughtered. They were still on feed. I would argue that largely that backlog is done and over with. And I say that because if I look at the number of cattle on feed over 120 days, we're back below where we were a year ago, based on the numbers in Friday's USDA report. And so really, I think that backlog is sort of done. It's pretty easy to note, too. You see that seasonal pattern in cattle on feed for longer periods of time. And it's really related to, if we put calves on feed that weigh 550 pounds, they're going to be on feed longer to get to their finished weight versus heavier feeders that go in. They don't take as much time. So, I think that contributes to that seasonal pattern, but I think you can certainly see those adjustments that have gone on. And that we've been able to work off that backlog, I think, is a real positive also in terms of prices going forward. Just for completeness, I included some fed cattle prices. largely, boy, we had a roller coaster. Prices up and down. Early in the year, that January through March, we were well below last year's prices. We got up to about 128 last year. We were down at 109, really before coronavirus hit in earnest. But we were also slaughtering quite a few more cattle than the year before and producing a lot more beef. We had some weeks, I think, were up like 6 and 8% year over year. So we produced a lot of beef early in the year, which pressured our prices. But in the last couple of months, we've been right close to a year ago. I think we would have seen a little more support for prices, but beef production being greater than a year ago, and our restaurant situation, I think, is really, keeping a lid on our ability to see those prices increase. And I think I think it's likely we'll see prices dip below a year ago, even though we may see some increase seasonally as we normally would do late in the year. It's going to be tough to get back up to those prices, given kind of that overall situation in the rest of the economy. I threw one more in, our cull cow prices. They typically dip at the end of the year. I think we're seeing prices pressured by a couple of things. One is just simply, again, larger beef production. We've also imported some more beef than we did a year ago. And most of that is lean trimmings, which I think competes directly with our cow market. But we see seasonally lower prices, largely because we cull most of our cows in the fall. And so I think that's part of what's going on as well, leading us to some lower prices. I think it's likely that we may be seeing some extra culling as well as some folks look at their grass conditions and pasture conditions and are moving some cows, moving some that maybe they wouldn't have, just looking at if we go back to that drought monitor. So I think there's some of that in there as well in those prices. Couple of keys, then I'll show you my price forecast. Keys in fed cattle. I'm going to start with that largely because I think what happens in our fed cattle is pretty critical for what happens to our calf market. Particularly in the times that we're in right now. Excuse me. This backlog of cattle is largely done. I think that's a positive factor. But we've got beef production over a year ago, and we've got a lot of restaurants that have either completely gone out of business or are struggling to stay open. And I think if we think about restaurants, our fast food places where we sell a lot of hamburger, those are open and going, but they were more set up for takeout because they got drive-throughs. I think one of the areas that we've lost is a lot of higher end places that sell a lot of steaks. And I think they've really struggled. And I think that's where we've lost some of our retail outlet for higher end cuts like that, steak places and things like that we're trying to recover through grocery stores. But that lost retail outlet, I think is hurting us on that side. If I look at our calf markets, though, I think what's happening in the fed cattle side is pretty critical for our lower calf prices. But really, feed costs, I think those are cutting into it. What we see in terms of drought, not only from the west, maybe moving some more calves to feedlots, but also our wheat pasture development and our stocker cattle demand from there, I think that's hurting that as well. Back on that cattle on feed data, one of the interesting things was we had record number of cattle on feed for October 1. The data goes back, the way it's done today goes back to 1996. And so we've got the most cattle on feed in October since at least 1996. One of the states that showed that kind of record level of cattle on feed was Colorado. And really, there's likely some movement of some drought force movement straight into feedlots there that probably boosted some of theirs. And California had a fairly large number as well. So, likely we're seeing some placements there really driven by what we see in the drought monitor. So with that, fundamentally, when I look at prices going forward, supplies probably a little lower in terms of cattle numbers. We're lower than we were a year ago, but we've got all this turmoil, really coronavirus related, and we're struggling on. And I want to say this carefully. I would argue we're struggling on the demand side for beef, not because people don't want to buy beef, but because we've got a ton of folks unemployed. We've got a huge cut in gross domestic product, our measure of the economy. We've got these restaurants that are shut down. What we've lost in restaurants are probably not made up completely by our increased grocery store sales. And so, I think we have some demand problems there related to the overall economy. And quite honestly, that's not going to get solved until, what I might say instead is that is completely reliant on the path of our economic recovery from coronavirus. How do we recover? For folks who might be worried about going back to restaurants, how do they get comfortable going back to restaurants? And what is that path of recovery? I think that has a lot to do with the path of recovery, not only beef prices, but cattle and calf prices as well. So with that, let me show you my price forecast going out into 2021. If I look at the fourth quarter, my 500 to 600 pound calves, I got a range of 140 to 145. We've certainly dropped off that in the last couple of weeks, and I did not go and adjust those for this sharp rise or continued rise in feed costs. I think those are certainly pressuring our those 500 pound steers and 700 to 800 pound steers are pressuring those lower. Again, I would say that fourth quarter, we're going to be below where we were a year ago in terms of prices. And we'll probably pressure that quarter down some more, lower than my range. I should also say my prices reflect more of a North Texas into Oklahoma prices. And that's really because that's where my best, most complete data is from in terms of building some statistical models. Typically, the further south we go and the further east we go, the lower prices are. And that's largely due to transportation. Just moving them to where the wheat pasture is or where the feedlots are. But I think going forward, if I look at a fundamental thinking about the calf market, as I look into going into next year, I expect higher prices next year than this year. In fact, I expect higher prices if we look at next fall compared to 2019 as well. Again, that longer term cattle cycle nature building prices higher. I think, if we started looking at some of our quarterly adjustments here, I think one of the things we always think about in terms of timing of when to sell calves, when do we start to see those breaks in the cattle market? We always think about, fall, October when most cattle are sold. Yet if we go to some parts of Texas and parts of the South, those bigger runs of cattle happen earlier. And so, I think that's just some more food for thought going forward. And really, that's my last slide, just to kind of show fundamentally putting all this stuff together where I think calf prices are going. There's my contact information. And I'll tell you the best way to reach me is by my email address. And I'd love to get an email from you. If you got a question or something down the road, let me know. Given that, kind of the turmoil is still affecting us on campus as well. And so working from home and working back and forth, sometimes my phone there at the bottom is not the best way to reach me, but that email is pretty good. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Frank. I appreciate the invitation. This is always fun to do for me to talk about markets and what's going on. If you got all got any questions, I think that would be great. I'd love to field some of those. And so I'll end my slideshow and turn the screen back over to you if that's okay.
Dr. Anderson, thank you for being here with us this evening. If we could give you a round of applause, we certainly would.
Well, thanks.
A round of applause.
I think I quit sharing, so we're back to normal here.
And I think Jason put up on the screen, see if there's anybody that has some questions. I'm not sure if they did or didn't.
I did, Frank. And if you do have any questions, feel free to type those in. We'll wait a minute or so to see if we get any responses, and then we'll move on if we haven't gotten any of those.
Well, I talked real fast, so hopefully I kept on time and hit what, so kept the high points in the market, bigger picture market. Hopefully that works for what y'all were interested in.
Certainly did. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, I don't know that we have any questions yet, but if you do have something that comes to mind, again, feel free to use that text chat feature, and we'll make sure that we get that answered for you. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Rogelio, and he'll introduce the next presenter.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Dr. Anderson. Really good way to kick off the program, and also kind of lead into what our next session is going to be. With us today is Mr. Eddie Garcia. Eddie is our owner and manager of our Gulf Coast Livestock Auction, our local auction barn here in Jim Wells County. Eddie's been the owner for about 5.5 years, but he certainly isn't a stranger to the cattle business. He's worked as an order buyer for over 25 years alongside of his dad, Esteban Garcia, and they're very familiar faces all throughout South Texas. Kind of leading into this program today, I've asked Eddie to talk a little bit about what actually determines the value of feeder cattle as they come through through our local barns, and as Dr. Anderson alluded to it, there's differences in North Texas cattle and South Texas cattle, and that's what kind of brings to mind the things that are different of us, and they're different from here to the valley at the same time. But either way, he's going to talk a little bit about what makes or what brings the value of these feeder cattle, what determines that, and also what some of our producers can do to improve the dollars that they take home with them as well. Also, he's going to talk a little bit about the cull cow valuation and how he determines what cull cows are valued at. A big fat barren cow versus one that's skinny and has had a long life in production, and also what producers can do and some strategies for them to get the most dollars when they do bring them into town. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the camera and microphone over to Eddie. And Eddie, thank you very much for being with us.
Really, I appreciate the introduction. I really appreciate you being amongst you industry people here. I mean, I think these little seminars are very important in capturing the bridge there between some of the sale barns and some of the different ways of marketing your cattle. I see that the theme of the deal today is show me the money, and I would say show me your bull. And I think that's where it all starts. And I feel like that's probably the biggest point to hit on. And I feel a lot of times that's somewhere where a lot of producers miss. You know what I mean? If you would ask me which cattle types bring the best prices, that's a question I get a lot. The best, and I'm going to say color patterns do matter in this industry. The best calf that I sell, or the most popular calf that I sell on a week in and week out basis, is going to be your Charolais bull on a good South Texas cow, like a good Beefmaster or a good San Hit through this cow. I mean, you get that good dun color, you get that good yellow, you get that good buckskin, and that calf 90% of the time is going to go in there, shortens up his ears a little bit, and that color pattern just seems to attract the buyers probably more than anything. And I'm going to say probably a Hereford bull on a good Brangus cow. Some of our English breeds on some of our American breeds seems to be the best cross. And I kind of relate to like when you're raking hay and you have those 3 rows, you have to constantly be overlaying each other into one another to try to produce that calf. Because the buyers, they like our cattle down here because we have that good South Texas genetics. We have that great canvas to cross off of. So we have cattle that have really good capacity, and then those good bulls put that drive into them. They put that motor in them. The best advice I got from an order buyer a while back was told me, he said, Eddie, when I see that calf in the ring, I know he has to get up to 1,300 pounds fat, 1,400 pounds fat, or whatever the popular weight is for that time. So they need to know when they buy that calf that he has the capacity to get that big. So when a lot of these cattle are falling short of that, well, your prices are going to fall short of that. Another good cross that I really see is some of these Angus bulls on some of our Beefmaster cows, or vice versa, Beefmaster cow on an Angus Beefmaster bull on an Angus cow. So where we're taking away some of that ear, adding a little capacity, and it's just more times than not with you, like in my bullpen after the sale, if I have 10 to 15 bulls, there's really probably 4 or 5 bulls that I would recommend those producers to use. And from looking at it from a production standpoint, I mean, I see all these bulls up the country, from $2,500 to $3,500. I think the bulls are the cheapest thing on the market. I see people pay, $800, $900, $1,000, $15,000, $2,000 for some of their females. But in my opinion, bulls appreciate over time, especially in their prime. I mean, from that 2 to 6 years old, the amount of calves that he's going to give you and the amount of dollars that he can produce you, when it only takes maybe 6 or 7 good calves on a good yearling run to pay for that bull. So I cannot emphasize that enough. And another thing is we need to breed a calf that is inclusive to our area. To where if like he said, there's our southern markets, there's our central Texas markets, and there's our northern markets. If you're going to come down to my area and breed a bunch of short little Angus calves that have a hard time, through the summer and stuff, and don't really have any leg to them, and they're kind of shorty and squatty, those cattle might do good up in a northern market, but in our market right here, those cattle tend not to maybe do as well. So I can't put enough emphasis on the bull, and I feel that's where we're missing the mark a lot, especially in my area. And we seem to be in a line, since I've started in about 5.5 years, I've imported about, I'm going to say 20 to 40 bulls from north of I-10 or from the I-10 area down here, mainly consisting of the Charolais breeds or Hereford breeds, good Brangus bulls, good Angus bulls. And we do need to breed the Beefmaster with the Beefmaster and the Brangus and the Brangus, to make those good leathery heifers, to make those good canvas cows that I talk of crossing off of. But we have to understand, while the heifers may be a lot of value added there, some of those steers might tend to fall off the map just a little bit because they're showing a little bit more leather, a little bit more ear, and a little bit more skin in that matter right there. But for the most part, and looking at some of our discounts, what's the biggest discount that I see coming into the sale barn on a calf? I'm going to go with the light bone. There's just some cattle aren't carrying enough structural soundness to get to that big carcass size that the buyers want. And too many calves are missing that mark to where their shoulder's a little weak, their loin's a little narrow, that back leg kind of tapers off a little bit. We need that calf to get not extremely big, but we need him to be just enough good of a size to where he's going to be able to get to that 700 to 900 pound carcass while he's hanging. Another thing that's a big discount right now is the color patterns. I mean, I see that more and more with some of these old paint cattle, whether it be an old school painted Beefmaster or your retrofitted kind of half-crossed Longhorn cattle. The paints, they just fall off of order buyers' cards. I mean, there's a lot of orders that call for yellows, blacks, and red ball faces, but hardly any orders call for painted cattle up anymore. And I know the old adage that, well, when they're hanging up in the cooler, if a spotted one versus a black one, spotted one versus a red one, it's hard to tell what that calf was when you're just looking at his carcass. But I do know it translates to the ring. A lot of these orders are moving to solid colors or to white face or to molly face colors. If you can get that good black calf or that good red calf and put a good white face on them, it's even better. The dark red-hided Beefmaster, we're finding a little bit more pressure on those. The best thing that calf can have is a molly face or a red face or a white face on them. The females, that is a popular color. The Beefmaster breed right now is a dark red color, which sells really well on the replacement heifer side, but it doesn't translate too much over to our commercial calves. I would like to see those red calves mixed in with a little bit of white molly face or a little bit of a white face. Try to stay away from all the mixed breeds. What I say is we need to stay in our lane a little bit more and create a calf that the buyers want. The buyers are there to buy your cattle. They work off of volumes. They work off of commissions. This theory that buyers are going to sit through there and kind of sift through them and maybe sit on their hands and kind of sit back. No, buyers want to be aggressive. They're aggressive natured people. They're egotistical people. They are, you have to be a little bit greedy in this business because they're getting paid on the weight and they want a calf. Believe me, all the buyers are there to buy your calf. So if your calf is falling below that mark, if you're getting your check and looking at it, of course, prices are tough right now, so there's going to be some disappointment, in some of the better calves. But some of those outliers, some of those calves that just don't fit, some of these short calves, some of these people that are trying to breed cattle to go to the show ring, our show ring and our commercial ring are two different things. People trying to breed cattle within their thread, maybe because they saw a magazine or they saw a seminar from the way they were doing it in Oklahoma or Nebraska or all these other places. they might get hooked on that ideology of that's the way a calf has to be, but that may not translate to what we're trying to do right here. So you need to create a calf within the thread of what the buyers are looking for, and you will be rewarded in that aspect. And the other thing that I can't stress enough is timing. The timing of when you sell your cattle is probably the most important out of all aspects, in my opinion. Everybody loves me in the spring, and everybody kind of gets on my butt in the fall. I understand that they're born in the spring and they're sold in the fall, but we need to develop some kind of management practice. I don't know exactly, other than to change maybe your breeding programs. I know some of the times of the year going into the fall, there's other people on this meeting that could probably talk further to that with a little bit more expertise in that. On the marketing side, I feel like everybody gets that deer season fever. Everybody goes out to the ranch in that October time frame, and here they come, and they just flood the market. Last week, I sold some of my best customers big draws of calves, 60, 70, 80 calves in each draw, great calves. But we woke up on a Monday with the futures being expanded down the limit $5, and you got to sell $800 800 head the next day. The buyers coming in a little sluggish. These preconditioning yards are getting full. Trucks get full. The buyers might have been awake till 1, 2 o'clock the morning before. By the time they got home, they got to turn in all their recaps, turn in all their figures. Things are constantly changing. Trucks are really hard to get this time of year. Now we're experiencing some weather markets to where I got a guy, one of my buyers has 10 loads of cattle to ship this week so he can buy 10 more loads of cattle, but they're telling him they only want 7 of those loads because they're expecting some bad weather to come in. So things that are happening weather-wise far away from here, have a direct effect on what may happen tomorrow here in Alice, Texas. So that guy calls me and says, "Hey, Eddie, I'll be in, but maybe he might not be as tough, or maybe he might be out on a couple of orders." And right now, if you're at a loss for an order or two, it can make a really big difference in the market. We're selling some 6-weight heifers right now for $95 to $1 that are bringing $600. A month and a half ago, 2 months ago, those same heifers weighing 5 would have brought $125 to $128. That's $625, $650 versus $600, but those cattle were a lot lighter. So then, we're talking about production cost. Well, that would line up your production cost. And it's okay to let your pastures rest. It's okay to let your cows be cows and go out to the pasture with their girlfriends and just be cows. The notion of, we have a lot of green grass, we have to keep on it. We don't get many good years here in South Texas. So there's nothing wrong with letting a pasture come up in rotation. There's nothing wrong with giving those cows a break. It's not so much I was trying to come up with a saying. It's not so much when you sell your cattle, but it's when they're worth when it's worth the most. And I tried to get a lot of my customers to come through in that May, September, August, even up to about September 15th. After that September 15th is when we started to see a decline. People who sold cattle with me 3 weeks ago, their cattle are already worth $50 to $100 to $150 less at this time right now. So there's a lot of variance in the market. That calf might come in the ring, and if he fits that order, if he fits that order where a buyer can put them on them, know they can make a lot load of them, group them together, and send them up the way where those cattle are either resold, or the more and more of these packing houses are going to the grid. More and more of this thing is going to efficiency. It's going to a new way of breeding these cattle to where quality and efficiency is going to be rewarded at all aspects. So if we choose to be in that thread, if we choose to be in that realm, you're going to be rewarded. I would venture to say that only 40% of my producers, I feel, while I respect them all and we try very hard to market all of their cattle, I would say 40% of them to 50% of them are doing it within what the industry is exactly calling for. And the only people who ever complain are people with plain cattle, plain and simple. When the sellers come, they get their check, they walk away from my office. In the first couple of steps that they walk away, I can tell if they're happy or if they're sad, just by the way they look at their checks, by the way they shake their heads. And when I first started my business, I was a little bit more political about it, how I went at it. But going into year 5.5 in these fall runs, it comes down to the point is you guys, the producers, put a lot of pressure on the sell barn owners. They put a lot of pressure on the industry to sell the cattle. Nobody wants to take the blame for not doing it right. I only own your cattle for maybe 6 to 12 hours that they're here, or whenever you brought them to me. You had them for 6 to 12 months. Your input and your decisions and what you do at home, especially at conception, makes the rest of it a lot easier. So while we gladly accept that pressure and we accept that challenge, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock here a little while ago, I'm calling all my buyers. I'm getting all my ducks in a row. I'm trying to sell the sale before it even starts, making sure everybody's coming, seeing what kind of cattle I have. Is there anybody else that I can call? Is there anybody new on the radar? How can we continually add competition to our markets? But there are times when I can only sell what is brought to me. And when we make our market reports, like last week, I had the 5 weights at $1 to $1.35, or something like that. We sold a lot of those 5 weights from $1.10 to $1.25, but yet we did sell some from 75 to 90 because there's 2 sides to every average. But while the same buyer is there wanting to buy that calf, a lot of the orders, they'll just shake their head because they can't buy them for whatever reason. A lot of these calves are coming in really heavy hided. They're coming in really, really fleshy. While you can't stop that, it's a good year. But you go to precondition those calves, you go to start to cut their nuts out, and you get some calves that'll fall apart. We had an order the other day where the guy said, Eddie, we got to pull out today. I talked to my son. We've been buying about 300 or 400 a week. We're starting to drag them off. We're starting to pull them off. Medicine guys are going crazy, trying to get medicine to everywhere it needs to go. So, and we're looking at a lot of these preconditioning conversations that we have. That goes a long way, especially when you choose what type of the year you choose to sell your cattle. If you're going to do the castration and all that stuff, down in our area it's probably not done as much. You get to that I-10 up, or you get just up the road from us up. It seems that they do it a lot more. In our area, not so much. Sometimes it's hard to match up a calf crop. I mean, if you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 head, sometimes it's not really inducive to do that. If you're going to sell your cattle, which in my opinion, the best time to sell them is between February and that May time period. It's a lot easier to precondition cattle at that time. There's not as many of them. There's not as much variance in the weather. There's just a lot more factors that the buyers are in their favor to go forward in that regard. Talking cull cows and bulls, I've bought cull cows and bulls my entire life. And right now, these packing houses have moved to efficiency, carcass size. The premium, say we had $1.40 Saturday on a bull on the rail. That's on 1,000-pound carcass and up. And that's when I go back to some of these breeding bulls. I mean, you pay $3,000 for a good Charolais bull right now. You're liable to get $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 back for them right now on a good packer market. So that's something that needs to be that needs to be in your head when you're trying to buy these cows. Buy these bulls, and they break them down in 100-pound increments, and every time they come down, they take 2 cents off, 5 cents off, 8 cents off. On a bull that weighs 1,200 pounds, that does 50%, that's a 600-pound carcass. If he drops below 600 pounds, all he's worth is a cow figure. So if you have $1.40 on the bulls, and you only have $1 on cows, and somebody brings you an 1,100-pound bull, and he got 47 cents for it instead of 65 cents for it, it's because he was too small to go to a big carcass price, and he was too big. He was too small to go big carcass, and he fell back to the cow price. And a lot of the cow prices are on the same scale. 500-pound cow, 500-pound carcass is deemed the biggest carcass. On a 550, you'll get an 8-cent premium, and on a 600-pound cow, 600-pound carcass and up, you'll get a 15-cent premium, but that's on a top cutter, which is the most amount of meat with the less amount of fat on it. Right now, the fat cows, they're usually 5 to 10 back on the rail of the top cutters, but right now they're running pretty much even. That's due to some other factors, some other people coming in and buying some cows from other parts. So the packing house that buys the majority of our cows, which is Lone Star Packing there in San Angelo and Cavanis up there around Oklahoma border, all those places are 6 hours, from 6 to 8 to 10 hours from here for where these cows go. So it's very imperative that the cattle that you do bring us, we're able to load them. They still have some carcass value to them. I think that's two of the biggest mistakes that producers make is they'll keep a cow too long where she's a barren cow. She'll get too fat to where she's discounted. or on a cow that would we call as a canner cow, has a lot of risk. You know, she's going to cut that 300. She weighs 800 pounds and does a 40% carcass. I mean, you're looking from a 300 to a 400 pound carcass, and we're talking about 26 to 30 cents off the rail. So while you have a 1,100 pound fleshy cow that's worth $1 on the rail right now, you know, her counterpart weighing 750 to 9 with not a lot of flesh, you know, you're taking 26 to 30 cents off the rail. You know, 500 pound cow is even, a 450 is 5 cents back, a 400 pound cow is 15 cents back, and a 350 pound carcass is 30 cents back. So you can go from 55 cents to 25 cents in a heartbeat, and there's a lot of room right there. There's a lot of production methods. There's just a lot of things that we need to do, is maybe not stay in love with some of these cows so long, maybe not give them the chance. You know, I run into this a lot. You know, people love their cattle just like I do. I understand why they might keep them. She's going to give me one more calf. She'll give me one more calf. And while that is the truth, at some point you have to know that the value of that cow will fall off the cliff, you know, rapidly. So those are some of the things you have to take into consideration. Bring us a cow that has some strength to get on the truck. Bring us a cow that has some yield to her, so we can get you a good return value, because I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I know the cull cow and bull is a good percentage return on everybody's yearly budget. I don't know if that kind of hits a couple of bases that I was brought in to talk about. But is there anything else, how you had to?
Just give us a real quick synopsis of what you saw, 1 minute synopsis of your reaction as a sale barn owner and manager to COVID and everything that happened between March and now.
Well, and it goes hand in hand, just the uncertainty. You know, these buyers like to hedge. Like the hedge cattle. You know, we need to have the futures market in play, which I feel is a broken kind of system right now. I believe that we're putting too much. That's where everybody seems to draw the line from, and I wish that would be fixed a little bit. Due to the COVID deal, I saw a lot of buyers have to take a step back and reshuffle on the fly, just like everybody else did. We seem to be recovering. We seem to have a little bit more aware about where we're going. It doesn't seem to be such an issue as far as it was at the beginning. It's becoming a little bit more lax, but, you know, listening to the news and stuff, you can take it for what it's worth. But it did have a negative effect, especially with the amount of people that you could have in your auction barn buying. I mean, that didn't do us a good service as far as having to cut some of the public out that would necessarily maybe buy a stocker cow or buy a calf for the house there.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Well, Eddie, thank you. I think we're pretty much on time with this. So any questions for Mr. Garcia?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia, and thank you, Rogelio, for facilitating that. Our next segment, I think Mr. McCool is going to introduce. Bobby, I've got that queued up for you, so if you want to just go ahead and set that up, and I'll take care of it for you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Eddie, for being part of our program tonight. Good job. As we were planning this series of programs, we also wanted to include in our presentation something about special cow sales and also feeder calf sales. So we also knew that both Rodney Butler and Riley Rhodes would not be available on Monday nights, but they were gracious enough to give us some time to do some interviews. So what we have recorded, I think, is good stuff, but they did wish that they could be here live, but because of their sales being on Monday, they could not be here. So Jason, if you want to start the video, first up we've got Rodney Butler, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Beeville-Nixon Livestock Commission Company and a little bit about special cow sales.
I'm Rodney Butler with Beeville Livestock Commission and Nixon Livestock Commission. We're a family-owned business. We have sale on Fridays here in Beeville, 11 o'clock, and we have sales on Mondays in Nixon, starting at 11 o'clock also. We strive to have a good market down here in South Texas as far as the cattle business. So we're open every day, but Mondays on Fridays. We're in Nixon on Mondays, but we're open for business every day of the week from 8 to 5 all during the week. And we're open on Thursday nights till 10 o'clock. We have a really good market down here in South Texas. We strive to have good quality cattle in a good market. We try to accommodate the buyers to make a fair market for our sellers. And we have on our special sales every year, we have 2 special sales twice a year here in Beeville, with the South Texas Hereford Association. And they've been having one here in the Beeville area for over 70 years. And we lease the barn out to them, and we also run it for them. But they strive to have good quality cattle. They sell registered Hereford bulls and registered and commercial Hereford females. And in the last 4 years, we've added the Bremer influence Bremer cattle. We sell registered Bremer bulls and commercial and registered Bremer heifers. And we sell the F1, so that's why we decided to combine the 2 sales and let the Bremer sell Bremer cattle at that sale. It's a good market. It's been a good clientele for the South Texas area, bringing Hereford bulls into the area. They're good. They cross real well with the different breeds that are down here in South Texas. But the main reason is to have a place to market and get a marketable price for the sellers that raise these F1 and Hereford cattle. And like I said, they've been here doing this in Beeville for a good while, and we influenced the Bremer influence to have the F1, because the F1 cow is used strongly down in South Texas because of her milking and humid climate ability. And for the cattle that we sell there, we normally use the local ranchers around the area that bring cattle to this sale. The bulls, they're coming further north because we don't have that many Hereford breeders down in South Texas, so they bring them in from up north. But they climatize well down here. We've had good luck with them. Customers that buy them, they use them quite well with their Brangus cross and their Brahman cows. To get that F1 cow, you got to have a Hereford and a Bremer. So they use them and down here in South Texas, and we try to have a place to market them cattle. We sell them usually in lots, depending on how they bring them in, but we sell them in lots of 2 up to 5. Just so you want to buy a set of 5 heifers or a set of 5 bred cows to go back to the ranch. The Nixon sale, we have a sale up there on Mondays, but we also have a sale there twice a year. It's called the South Texas Marketing Association has a sale in Nixon. They have quality cattle. Normally they strive in the F1, the Bremer, the black Brangus, and then your crosses, your black Baldies and your Sanger-Trudis Hereford crosses, your red Baldy cattle. They try to strive there. They have a good quality set of cattle that always come to that sale twice a year. And normally those cattle stay in the area, but they do have a good clientele of cattle going out of state. Where the Hereford Association, most of those cattle stay in the area, or they go toward south, further south than Beeville. But the 2 barns, we tried to have loyalty and quality cattle at both sale barns to sell in the special sales. Plus, they add value to the calves that we have to market here on Fridays and Mondays. So we strive to have good quality cattle that to send to the ranchers, to provide for the ranchers. And just the quality that comes to these sales, we try to keep the quality up, because keep the quality up, and for you keep your buyers coming to the sales every year is a main thing, and that's a goal that you have to strive to get is the good quality. You want quality to sell your cattle, and I've said quality quite a bit in this interview, but I just think that's a real plus to marketing the calves that come through the barn on a regular basis, or if you're at a special sale. If you're at a special sale, you go there to buy cattle that are quality and special. They have a lifetime to go to the ranchers and produce them a good quality calf. And with the F1 cow, they're really good because you can cross them with pretty much any other type of cross a bull that to make a marketable calf. You put a Charolais bull on them. You can go Hereford back on them F1 cows, or you can go black. It's just your preference. But main thing is the goal is to have a good marketable calf to raise to sell. And then when you have your registered Bremer cows or your commercial Bremer cows, you put Hereford bulls on them to raise those F1 heifers to bring to these Hereford sales or to these special sales to influence the F1 breed, because they are strongly used here in South Texas and throughout the state. As far as your bulls, the Hereford bulls, like I said, they use them quite a bit on your Bremer cattle. They do use them on your Brangus cows to get your black baldy calves. They sure do dollar out real well here at the regular markets. And we strive to have good quality cattle. And loyalty to your customers is a good thing. Having good quality cattle that you sell, they'll always come back to those special sales that you have as long as you have quality there. And the bulls, we brought in the Bremer bulls to the Hereford Association selling because of just trying to get some Bremer influence back in the cattle down here in South Texas. I know them Bremer steers, they take a beating on them at the market, but you got to have a Bremer bull if you're going to raise some good quality females, and to raise Bremer bulls if you're in that market to raise a Bremer bull. Throughout the year, we have some special sales on regular sale day on Fridays and Mondays, and that's due to, you have a customer that comes in and needs to sell some cattle, maybe lost a lease or something, and needs to market his cattle. Well, throughout the year, we do have special consignment sales here at Beeville and in Nixon, and when we do that, we normally get, it may only be 50 to 100 head of cattle, but we try to get the quality there to sell them in that special consignment, and we try to do that, and we advertise those cattle as well as they come in. Bring these cattle to a special sale. You look for uniformity in a set, and I will say at a special sale it's better to sell more than one in a deal. It's better to sell 2 to 5 head. The 5 head, you try to get them uniform. Whether they're brown baldies or they're F1 tiger stripes, your brindle white face, or your black baldies, you group them in sets of 5, and they usually sell because a man that's coming and sit to replace some cattle in his herd, he normally wants more than just one. So it's best to sell 2 to 5 in those, and we try to get those cattle in here and group them in deals. We call them deals, and deals of 2 to 5. And the main thing at a replacement sale is you want quality. But then if you're going to a special sale, either in Beeville or Nixon, and it's a special sale put on by the South Texas Hereford Association or the South Texas Marketing Association, you're going to have some health certificates. And those health certificates consist of your open heifers. They need to be calf foot vaccinated and have your IBR shots and all that. Your bred cattle, they're going to be palpated, bred, safe and calf by a veterinarian. And the bulls, they will either be, they'll have to be tested, and now they have to be trick tested. And that's just to make sure that you've taken those cattle to your ranch, to your cattle, that you don't have a health issue. And the health certificates is mainly just saying that their cattle are healthy, but your deal is on the bulls for his fertility and trick, and the females to make sure that they are bred or open. Because if a man comes in here and he wants to buy a set of open cattle, he don't want to come in here and buy this set of cattle and there's one short bred or there's one bred, they threw it on the deal. You want to make sure that your deals are legit, and for the buyer is satisfied when he gets them. As far as the market, I know my deal was on the special sales, and seeing what type of cattle come to these special sales and all. But as far as the market, your old fall runs, when the weather starts changing, getting hot and cold, you get a variation in the price. So during the fall runs, when a lot of cattle are coming to town, you do have sickness and illness in your cattle. So that has a thing to do with the market, far as bringing top dollar. Usually your fall runs, the cattle market is a little softer versus throughout the year. But far as that goes, there's not much you can do about your calves. I'm not saying that you bring them in sick or something, but it's just when they throw all these cattle, they buy all these cattle throughout the week and they throw them all together at their feed yard. Well, you're going to get some sickness, but you try to keep your cattle in good health as far as shot programs and stuff like that. That'll help market the calves also when you go to market them. Y'all can reach me here at the sale barn at 361-358-1727, or y'all can call Nixon Livestock at 830-582-1561. And I thank y'all for y'all's time. Sorry I couldn't be here tonight to do this live, but I'm obligated to go to Nixon on Mondays, and we've been having some good big runs up there, and hopefully for a stronger market, and we do need some rain. So thank y'all.
Again, that was Rodney Butler with the Beeville Livestock Commission in Beeville and Nixon. As Jason pulls up the next video, again, we were a pleasure to be able to visit Mr. Riley Rhodes. He's the owner-operator at Live Oak Auction. It's located between Three Rivers and George West, but he was kind enough and took some time to help us out here, and we truly thank him for that. And so I'll turn it over to Jason again.
Hello, my name is Riley Rhodes. I'm the owner and manager at Live Oak Livestock Auction in Three Rivers. The business here has been, we've been around since 1969. My father and some other folks built it originally here out of, it's located between here in George West and Three Rivers on Highway 281. I've been the owner and manager for 22 years now, and glad to be here with you. Our sale day, we have a sale every Monday each week. We're usually closed a couple of weeks during the holidays, during the Christmas holidays, sometimes for the 4th of July, sometimes for a couple of the other holidays, kind of depending on when they fall during the week. We accept cattle all week long. Primarily, we get them in on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays and Monday mornings, but we do have the facilities, the covered sheds and barns and pen space to hold them as long as we need to. Sometimes we actually get cattle in on Tuesdays off of some of the bigger ranches, for the following week sales. So we can accept cattle any day of the week. We do have these special sales for the past 5 years. We've been putting on some of these wean calf sales along with, and we usually have two special cow sales each year, one in the spring, one in the fall. We just got finished with our fall cow sale last Saturday. And the next on our chart will be the another wean feeder calf sale, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. And we have not set the date. We're looking maybe for the middle to I guess I don't have the calendar. Maybe the 16th or the 23rd of November. That's what we're looking at for our next feeder calf sale. The requirements for our feeder calf sale, everybody has a little different protocol. When you start talking about weaning calves, what we require is that they have to be weaned at least 45 days. They have to have at least one round of shots, including an 8-way and some sort of pneumonia preventative. And the steers have to be castrated. And I don't go into the situation or the segment to where I tell them what vaccines they have to use. They do call me and ask if what they're using will work, and I'll tell them yes or no. But there's so many different types of vaccines and so many different protocols out there that people read about, and and pharmaceutical companies are pushing, feed companies are pushing. So there's all kinds of different ones, and I don't go to tell them that they have to do one or the other, just as long as they do one of them and that the cattle are weaned at least 45 days. when they come into the barn, primarily these cattle, we try to get at least 1,000 of them on the books, because that is kind of for marketability. The more you have, the easier they are to sell, and you'll have a better market. If you just have 100 or 200 wean calves in a sale, it's real hard to get your northern buyers to come down here and possibly just end up with 20 or 30 head of wean calves. They're just not going to do it. So if you have 1,000 or 2,000 of them, or 3,000 or 5,000 of them, whatever you can put together to where you can make load lots and make it more appetizing for the northern feedlots and different people throughout the country to come and buy these cattle, well, then the better off you are. And that goes for our regular Monday sales too. Everybody, a lot of people get really scared. And I don't know how many times they've told me, well, you have 3,000 head, or you have 2,000 head, or you have 4,000 head. That's too many cattle. You don't have enough buyers. That is false. The more cattle you have, the more activity it creates, the more buyer interest you'll have. It's my job as the owner and manager, when we do have those big numbers, is to notify everyone and let them know. And it actually creates a better market for the higher volume that you have. We do not commingle very often cattle in these wean calf sales. We try to stick with each consignor has its own lots. We try to keep it that way. Just we have done it before, but it's really hard to find somebody that has the exact same cattle, the exact same weights, the exact same quality, the exact protocol of shots. So we will advertise them. If somebody has 50, 500-pound steers over here, and 20 over here, and 30 over here, we'll try to run them together to where this person can buy all three of those and make a lot, or make a truckload. But very seldom do we commingle people's cattle. And just like I said, we do sell them in seller lots. Sometimes, if a seller, we've had people consign up to 300 or 400 or 500 head off of one ranch, and we'll go through there and make as many load lots as we can. And when I say load lot, I'm saying 48,000 to 50,000 pounds of cattle. For example, 100 of them weighing 480 to 500 pounds. Or 70 of them weighing 700, or whatever the case may be. But we try to do as many load lots as we can from that particular customer, or try to get 2 or 3 people that have similar quality cattle to make load lots. That's a big part of the marketability. Yes, there are advantages. We do see premiums. We usually have 3 or 4 of these a year. The premiums have ranged anywhere from 7 cents up to 16 cents. Seems like we have bigger premiums in the fall for good reason. There's a lot of sickness in the feed yard this time of the year. People would a whole lot rather buy a wean calf than a fresh green calf. So those, premiums are usually more in the fall than they are in the spring. But they've always had a premium, and every one of them we've had, there's always been a premium. It does help the marketability, and obviously if you're a buyer, especially this time of year, you would a whole lot rather get a hold of some wean calves that have had all their shots, and you're not going to have any problems with sickness, and you can stick them straight into the feed yard, or straight into a grow yard, or straight out on wheat or oats, or straight out on grass, or native brush country, or whatever you want to do. It's obviously a better deal if you're a buyer and can do that. Than buying these fresh green calves, especially this time of the year. On the other side of that, is the seller getting paid for it? Well, yeah. I mean, but a 10-cent premium, 12-cent premium. You have to watch what your input costs. If you're just going to do it for a 45-day period, and give them all their shots and put them in the pen and feed them every day for a 45-day period, it's going to be very hard to recoup the 10 cents. Now, if you can feed them for a couple of weeks and then turn them out on pasture, or if you can wean them and then kick them out for 6 or 8 months and get a couple hundred pounds on them, that obviously works really well if you have the forage. So each time, each case, it is different. Marketability, I always tell people before they make that decision to call me. We can talk about it and see what the markets are currently, what it could look like down the road, what it's going to cost them to do this weaning. But again, just what I'm saying, if you wean your calves, if you wean 80 calves and give them all their shots, especially if you do everything that some of these protocols are telling you to do. To where there's certain vaccines you have to use and give 2 or 3 shots, which it all is all good, but it all costs money. My point is, if you do that and you wean your calves in this 45-day period and you put them in your feed cost as your main cost, if you do that for a 45-day period and then get 10 cents a premium on them, you're going to have a very hard time getting in the positive margin. Buyers do report back to us. We've had very good luck. With these sales, we've fortunately had very few problems with sickness with the people that are very trustworthy, and have had really good luck with what they're telling us, and signing off on their vaccinations and everything. But the feedback from the people that have buying them has been really good. One thing we will say, a couple of years ago, another big issue right now, especially, or 2 issues right now, is the big heifer market. Some of these heifers, people are leaving them out on cows, till they're 500-600 pounds, and some of these heifers get bred. And then when we start trying to sell these, 800-pound feeder heifers, and a lot of them are 3 or 4 or 5 months bred, we really can't tell it, but they are, and they get them up to the feed yard. We're representing them, trying to represent them as open heifers, and they get them up there, and then a bunch of them start having calves in the feed pen. That causes a problem, and surely the buyer, the feedlots do not want those. So one of the other things that we've started doing the last couple of weaned calf sales is palpating those heifers before we sell them and guaranteeing them open. And then sometimes the seller will come pick up those bred ones and put them back in their cow herd, or sometimes they'll just, choose to sell them in a regular sale. But that has been a big issue. The bigger heifers, they've been harder to move this past, year and a half to begin with. And then you start throwing some bred ones in there, then the reputation on them gets really bad. The other issue is this past year and a half with South Texas Beef Center down there in Corpus, they have really put wrench on these Brummer cattle. We used to be able to get them marketed down there fairly well, with the half Brummer influence and above. And they, with their new grid system, everything that has really changed. I understand what they're trying to do, and everybody needs to raise, better quality to reach their standards. But just get ready. If if you weaned any of these calves that have a high Brummer influence, half Brummer or more, yes, you still get a premium, but because of where they're falling on their grid system, not only down here but up north too, and even if they will accept them up north, you're not going to like it if you're the buyer. So just hopefully that thing is a cycle and it'll change. But for right now, the higher Brummer influence cattle is a tough thing to move. Trends, yeah, there has been a trend for weaned cattle for years. It's still here. Just like I said, we buy a lot of steers, we wean a lot of steers, we precondition a lot of steers and heifers, but there is a trend for sure. And it's a good thing to do. It's just like anything, though. It's a business, and if you're going to do it, if you're a rancher and you're a producer, just make sure that you have all your input costs in order. Because I don't want you to put a whole bunch of cattle, a whole bunch of money into your calves, and then expect to get $100 a head in that 45 or 60-day period, over all of the price of the calf and your input costs. Just visit with whoever you market your cattle with, and make sure you have all of those things in order. But it is a good thing. I highly recommend it. You have to watch your input costs just like any other business. We talked about the ample reward, and we talked about the 45 to 60-day weaning period, and the vaccinations properly. And then they are all these things that are here on this checklist are definitely things that help out, will help the marketability. But main thing, and let me see this last, the planer type cattle, we talked a little bit about the planer type cattle. They will bring more if you do wean them, but it's a tough sale right now, especially, on the weaned cattle. on the lesser quality cattle. If you're going to spend the money on it and do it right, you just will start with a good product. And that's what I say. Whether you sell them in our regular sale or you sell them in our wean calf sale, quality matters. Get out there, get yourself some good bulls. Don't bring something. We can get you market and hopefully. Whatever market is that day, but we can't create miracles. I can't, we can't get $1.20 for a longhorn. We can't get $80 for a longhorn steer. We can't get, $1.10 for a full Bremer steer. It's not what the market is. But start with a good product, especially if you're going to put money into it. Start with a good product and finish with a good product. And it's a lot easier on everybody. It costs you a little bit of money up front, but it'll pay in the long run. We really appreciate your time. Hope that you will consider us in your marketing, cattle marketing, livestock marketing. We're always on the road. If we can come help you, myself or Willie or Russell, and we have several other people that solicit business for us. If we could ever come out to your ranch and visit and talk about marketability of your cattle, we'd love to do so. Thank you very much.
Again, we wanted to thank Rodney and Riley for doing these videos for us. If anyone has any questions that might be they want to direct directly to them, go ahead and type them in, and if we need to, we'll send them an email and have you some answers next week on our next segment. So again, I want to thank them for their time and effort. I'll turn it back over to Jason.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Again, we do think that we have got a great set of programs here and look forward to presenting our next one on Monday. That's going to be on feeds and mineral supplementation and understanding the relationships between our forages, be it on pasture or in a form of a hay bale, and feeds and maintaining that cow's body condition. And then we've also, that's going to be presented by Dr. Jason Banta, our beef cattle specialist in Overton. We've also got Dr. Ron Gill on the agenda, and he'll be speaking about cattle minerals and why they're important. And so look forward to seeing everybody back here tomorrow, next week, Monday. If anybody has any again, we want these sessions to be interactive. We apologize that, we aren't opening up the mics and everything to anybody, but certainly if you do have questions, we want to get those answered. So please get those to us, and we'll look forward to seeing y'all next week.